Alrighty, we'll get started. What shall we start with? Pr8 is conducting 100 royal ceremonies, let's say, and Indra's not happy with that because Pr8 is surpassing Indra's glory. Pr8's son, Atri and Pr8, oh no, Marichi, who is it? Which was the sage that keep? Oh, Atri. Atri kept pointing out Indra to Pr8's son Vijitashtha, who kept preventing Indra from stealing the horse. But then when Pr8 saw that the people were looking at Indra like, he's pretty smart. He's using strategy. He's using deception. He's using distraction to achieve his goals. We could do that too. And he was using religious and spiritual symbols to achieve his mundane political ambitions. Then Pr8 got really mad with that. Pr8 himself got furious with that. So he wasn't really too upset when Indra was trying to steal his horse. But he was upset when he realized that the way Indra was trying to steal his horse was going to make religious hypocrisy come into society. So now he gets pissed. The blessed and renowned Pr8 became very angry at Indra and took up his bow and arrows. The priests saw him rise in a terrible rage to swiftly destroy the thunder wielder. Indra's the thunder wielder. And they protested, "O king of broad intellect, it is declared that if you injure any creature now, your sacrifice will be ruined." So they stopped him. They said, "You have to remember that it's a principle that if the person carrying out the ceremony commits any violence, then the ceremony is void. It won't work." This is why Indra has the confidence to come forward and steal your horse. Right, so Indra's got a little loophole. Always a loophole with Jeshta. They're always exploiting a loophole, finding some loophole. So the loophole is Indra feels protected from Pr8 because he knows Pr8 won't really be able to attack him, because if the person performing a sacrifice gets angry and attacks people, the whole sacrifice gets ruined. So Pr8 stood up. He was going to attack Indra, and the priest said, "Don't do that. You'll ruin your whole ceremony." Pr8 glanced furiously at the sky towards Indra, and the priest gave him a suggestion. "You don't have to kill him. We will. We will stop him. And we will do it in a sacrificial manner. We will invoke that Lord of Storms who wants to destroy your sacrifices." "How will you do that?" Pr8 asked. "With mantras of summoning." "Will they be powerful enough to summon the King of Paradise?" Pr8 asked. "Their powers are insurmountable. They will invoke him instantly and irresistibly. He's already powerless because he opposes you, and we are all powerful because we serve you." So here's their idea. Their idea is, we're doing a Vedic sacrifice. We can invoke the gods. Indra's a god. He's trying to run away from the sacrifice. We got him. We can use the mantra that invokes him to the sacrifice, and he won't be able to run away. He'll be pulled to the sacrifice. And Pr8 says, "Are you sure you can do that? Against his will?" And they say, "Of course we can. We're serving you. You're the all-powerful one, and he's weak because he opposes you." It's kind of a cool thing to say. And then Pr8's going to ask, "Well, what do you do after you invoke him?" So then they say, "After we invoke him, we sacrifice him. He's stealing your horse, so we will invoke him and put him as the horse. We'll put him in the sacrificial fire. Before Pr8 could even reply, the furious priests prepared to incant the mantras, taking butter oil ladles in their hands. You know, one of the things that you have to do for the ceremony, pour butter on a fire. But self-born Brahma interrupted, ordering them to stop. So remember, Brahma, Shiva, and Rudra attend Pr8's ceremonies. That's one of the things that gets Indra jealous. So now when these priests come up with this idea, maybe you were thinking, God, that's a really good idea. But Brahma thinks this is a terrible idea. And I wonder why. Hello, Heital. Brahma thinks it's a terrible idea to invoke Indra to the ceremony and then capture him. Brahma says, you must not try to kill Indra. You will fail. For he is an essential part of the sacrifices manifest by the all-attractive. He's an essential part of all the Vedic rituals. You can't try to kill him. You'll fail because he has to exist. And then he says, should sacrifice be employed to destroy sacrifice? If you kill Indra, you're going to make all these sacrifices impossible to perform. So, but if you're going to kill Indra through a Vedic ceremony, you're going to destroy all the Vedic ceremonies. Is that really what you want to do? Because he's interrupting a Vedic ceremony? You'll kill him in a Vedic ceremony, and by doing so, destroy hundreds of Vedic ceremonies. You must not kill Indra. You will fail, for he's an essential part of the sacrifices manifest by the all-attractive. Should sacrifice be employed to destroy sacrifice? If you did kill him, what would happen to all the gods for whom he is the essential king? You guys just are dealing with Pr8, who had to save all of you because you had no king. You want to do the same thing to the gods? Get rid of their king? There was silence. Nobody replied, so Brahma continued. O priests, by disrupting the king's religious ceremony in the disguise of a religious person, Indra has opened the door to terrible religious hypocrisy and exploitation. Now, just see the first result. You want to kill him by a religious ceremony. So, this is pretty wild. Brahma says, look, we all know Indra sucks for what he just did. Because what he just did has taught people that they can use religion as a tool. They could exploit religion and spirituality for their own purposes. That sucks, doesn't it? Now look at the first result. The first result of that, somebody following his lead, is you right now. What you want to do. You want to use a ceremonial function to harm somebody else, to kill somebody else. You want to achieve your goals through the ceremonial function. You're doing exactly what he's doing. So that's also very interesting in how, like, it's like a Guantanamo Bay type of political situation here, where you have torture of terrorists or something. Do you really want to become like a terrorist to fight terrorism? That's Brahma's issue. That's what he's bringing up right now. If what you think Indra did is so bad, then would you do the same thing against him, or is it not equally bad? The priests put down the ladles in shock. Brahma then turned to Pr8 and said, broad-minded king, your fame is already spread everywhere. So what if you have performed one less than 100 rituals? What's the difference? You know that religion is actually meant for spiritual liberation, so why should you be so intent on finishing your 100th mundane religious sacrifice? What will you really gain if you succeed? Prithu's anger dissipated. Of course, if you look carefully at Prithu's anger, he wasn't upset about Indra stealing his horse. He was upset about Indra exploiting religious symbols. But now Brahma's saying, just let him get away with it. Let him get away with it. Who cares if he gets away with this? It's just some stupid sacrifice. You don't even need to do this. 100 sacrifices. Whoopee. You did 99. That's what Brahma's saying. Now, his next thing he says is also interesting. Have some compassion for him. Have some sympathy for him. How would you feel if some other king was like rising up? Maybe you would feel the same way Indra's feeling. So he says, Indra is a king just like you. And both of you are parts of he who is glorified in the topmost poetry, Uttam Shlokam, Vishnu. So why should you be angry at him? You're both kings. That means you're both functionaries in Vishnu's universe. So you're two parts in the same machine. Why should you be angry at him? Why should anyone be angry at either of you? I wish good fortune to both of you. Brahma is pretty smart. I like this advice from Brahma. It's pretty freaking cool. He's really advising Prithu, just get off this political platform altogether. Just, Indra's damage is already done. Don't amplify it. Just let it go. Give up this ceremony. Oh wait, I skipped a paragraph. Prithu looked at the final sacrifice half completed, and Brahma encouraged him. Your soul is very soft and kind, O Emperor. Don't worry yourself by dwelling on this last sacrifice. What's done is done. The mind of one who dwells on what destiny seems to steal is lost in the blinding darkness of anger. The mind of one who dwells on what destiny seems to steal is lost in the blinding darkness of anger. Your 100th sacrifice was stolen from you by fate, by some weird event that happened. Just let it go. Don't dwell on it. If you keep your mind fixed on this bad luck, you'll just get pulled more and more into it. What's done is done. Give up this ceremony, Brahma says. Of all the gods, Indra is the most tenacious and impossible to thwart. That's why there's still a chance that my prediction about Trump is not incorrect. Of all the gods, Indra is the most tenacious and impossible to thwart. He has already created such a mess by using religious symbols to accomplish your religious aims. Seeing how Indra ruined your ceremony by stealing the horse, everyone is now tempted to exploit religious symbols for their own interests. That mess is already done. That's done. Now just let it go. You have come into this world to help bring the people into moral harmony. After Vena practically destroyed morality, you arose from a part of his body as a manifestation of Vishnu's expansion. Fulfill your mission, which is the mission shared by all of us who help create the world. Don't think about destroying Indra. Think about destroying the religious hypocrisy he has invited by so wantonly exploiting religious symbolism. It's another heavy-duty thing that Brahma is telling. It's along the lines of, you have to... It's kind of along the lines of don't hate the sinner, hate the sin, that kind of thing. But in Indra's case, he gets clemency, just like Trump gets clemency from a lot of his legal issues because he's the president. Indra has to be granted some clemency because he's Indra and he's fulfilling an all-important function of keeping the gods organized. Thanks. So don't think about destroying him. You can't destroy him. The world needs a king of the gods. But the bad things that he's done are not good things, they're bad things. So destroy the effects of those bad things. So how did Pr8 reply? I'm sure you can imagine how Pr8 replied. He accepted the guidance of the world's guru, Brahma. He's called Jagat Guru Brahma. Jagat Guru means the guru of the world. And he compassionately forgave Indra and made peace with him. Famous Pr8 concluded his rituals with the ceremonial bath. So he just said, okay, skip it. We're done. Let's conclude the ceremony. So they just went straight to the conclusion. The divine benedictors, and he got all the benedictions anyway. The divine benedictors gladly granted him benedictions. He respectfully gave donations to the scholars. They felt honored. And they whose wishes always come true offered the emperor their best wishes. Then he respectfully gave charity and honor to everyone who had attended the ceremony, from the ancestrals, gods, and original sages down to the common human. This is really the primary social function of Vedic ceremonies, is to distribute wealth. So you collect, see, the Vedic yajna itself is a socialist act, because you collect a huge amount of resources and wealth, similar to taxation. I mean, huge amounts of food, huge amounts of gold, huge amounts of animals get collected. And then at the conclusion of the ceremony, all those animals, all that food, that gold gets distributed in charity by the performer of the sacrifice to everyone, from the most respected down to the most common people. Okay, so that's actually the end of chapter 19. You got Brahma dropping some heavy-duty knowledge. Any questions about this? Let me know. The next chapter is even more interesting. The next chapter is now Vishnu. After the conclusion of the ceremony, Vishnu is really happy with the way that it went. So you see, sometimes when things go wrong, it's actually even better. Because when everything goes right, I mean, yeah, it's moderately good. But when something goes wrong, yet people still behave well, that's even more glorious. So when in this final ceremony, everything went wrong. Indra screwed the whole thing up. And still, it came to a good conclusion because of people's good behavior and Pr8's good character and Brahma's good advice. So Vishnu was super happy with that. So now Vishnu is going to also speak to Pr8. And this conversation from Vishnu to Pr8 is really amazing. And I'm telling you, the remaining conversations in the tale of Pr8, there's Vishnu to Pr8, and then there's Pr8 to his citizens. And then there's Sanat Kumar to Pr8. These conversations are just mind-blowingly awesome. So that's basically what's left. Anil, does Indra get clemency all the time because Varuna didn't claim his position back and there was no one else to fill the position? Indra just gets clemency because he needs to be there. You need to have a ruler. Even Vena got clemency in the sense that he wasn't qualified to be a king, but we needed a king. We didn't have anybody else. We put him in. So because this is something that sometimes Virgo-ish people, not to be too 12-signing about the whole thing, but doesn't understand, is that solutions don't have to be perfect to work. That imperfect solutions usually get you by. And sometimes it's the only thing that you have is an imperfect solution. And it's better than having no solution. Tama, thank you. If you're into my the idea of an audiobook, but these are all in written form already. Like, see on the screen, there's 2 book covers here. You can get those from victorcara.com/books, and a whole bunch of, and all the other ones, first division, second division, third division. But thank you very much. Why can't Varuna be reinstated? I don't know. And if Varuna was reinstated as an Indra, it's not like there wouldn't be problems. There was already a problem, right, with Varuna. Is that the kidnapping of Apas took place, and he wasn't really able to resolve it so efficiently without Indra's help. So there's never a situation where you don't have a problem when you're existing in a way which is not in harmony with reality. When you exist in a way which is in harmony with Bhagavan, then there's no problems. But when you exist in this whole world which is not in harmony with Bhagavan, then there's always a problem, no matter what your situation is. So really, as far as our common social and day-to-day lives go, don't seek perfection. You can't. There's no such thing. Just seek good enough. Imperfectly perfect. All right, let me get you started on this next chapter. We started a little late, so let's say we have 15 minutes left. We'll give Vishnu's enlightenment to Pr8. All attractive Vishnu, the powerful and carefree master, and the true object of all sacrifice, was pleased by Pr8's ceremonies and appeared before the emperor along with powerful Indra. So what Vishnu did was, he took Indra, said, "Hey Indra, come on. Be a big boy now. Come and see this guy." So he took Indra to Pr8. Glancing towards Indra, Vishnu said, "Here's the one who disrupted your 100th horse sacrifice. He seeks your forgiveness, so I think he deserves it. O God of humanity, the best humans, good people with good intellect, don't hold on to malice towards anyone." This is a very interesting... The basic scenario is now Vishnu is bringing Indra to Pr8 and saying, forgive this guy. He wants you to forgive him. He's coming before you. This is humiliating. I mean, can you imagine Trump doing something like going in front of Biden and having somebody else say, sorry about the whole thing with the election recount? Indra just did something really fishy, and then Pr8 forgave him in the sense of, I'm not going to go try to kill him or punish him. And then Vishnu comes and brings him to Pr8 and says, this guy wants you to forgive him. Pr8 is like, And Vishnu says, good people don't hold on to their malice. Sometimes good people have malice. They have hatred or anger. Not hatred, but anger. Sometimes good people have anger, but they look for the first opportunity to get rid of it. Indranuja. They look for the first opportunity to get rid of it. Whereas common people, they hold on to the anger. So now there's going to be a tangential topic. We're just going to take a tangent from this forgiveness of Indra thing, where Pr8 is going to ask Vishnu to elaborate. How is it possible to not have anger, harbor anger towards people? How can people not feel malice towards those who have harmed them? That's Pr8's question. And Vishnu's answer is, if you know the difference between your real self and its external form, if you know the difference between your true self and its body, the body that it has, then you'll be able to get rid of anger. Vishnu, he explains, people who don't understand the difference between the self and its body work very hard and for a very long time to secure what their bodies desire, but in the end, they wind up with no profit except their sweat. Such, where am I? Such frustrated and irritable people are very easily moved to malice. You know, if you are in that time of the month, then little things bother you a lot, right? Or if you're something else, if you're a man, something else is, you don't have that time of the month, but something else is bothering you, and then somebody walks by and does something slightly wrong, it bothers you a lot. So this is Vishnu's point. His point is that people are basically irritated and frustrated all the time because no matter what they do, they're not getting the satisfaction and happiness that they are thirsting for. So this condition, the condition that we're actually in, I once had a dream where for a half of a second, I felt what it would feel like to be relieved of a lot of one's desires, frustrations. It's so incredibly calm and peaceful. But nobody is feeling like that. We're all feeling really pushed all the time and pushed and aggravated by our desires, and therefore we're frustrated. That's why things bother us a lot. And the reason why we feel pushed and agitated is because we're associating our self with something that's very difficult to satisfy. Like if you think that your cracked cup is your only cup and you keep pouring water into it, you'll all be really frustrated and drinking will be really annoying. You don't realize that that cracked cup is not the only cup that exists. And similarly, we don't realize that this body is not the be-all and end-all of who and what we are. So the things that we're not able to do with this body, etc., the things that we're not able to be, frustrate the hell out of us. People who don't understand the difference between the self and the body work very hard for a very long time to secure what their bodies desire, but in the end they wind up with no profit except their sweat. Such frustrated and irritable people are very easily moved to malice, and it's very difficult for them to give up malice. Like what psychologists and sociologists have really explained this nicely. Like the people that cause violence to people, 99% of them are people who have been the victims of violence, and they need to vent the anger that they've experienced by having that, by being under that situation. The people who are very critical and hateful of others are people who grew up having people be very critical and hateful of them. So the people that get mad, the people that are frustrated and angry, they need somebody to be angry at. That's why people love Trump. Because that's one of the reasons why. Because Trump hates people and says nasty things about people, and people love that. Because it makes them feel good to have somebody to hate. There's some reason why. You can imagine now that there's some reason why. It's all these goddamn liberals. That's why I'm so aggravated. Or if somebody else was the president, it'd be all these goddamn conservatives. That's the whole problem. I'm so angry at them. Or it's this person in my life. That person is the whole reason why my life is a mess. And you don't want to give up that focal point for your frustration, because otherwise your frustration will just go crazy and maybe come back and snap at you. So that's Vishnu's point. It was actually very spontaneous. So now it's going to go on a further tangent. we're actually getting way more interesting conversation than just does Pr8 forgive Indra. First, we drop down a layer deeper into why you shouldn't hold on to angers and make people the scapegoat for your frustration. But now the reason that Vishnu gave for that was because the thing that's making you so angry is your body, because it's so limited. It's not what you really need it to be and want it to be. If you realize that the body is just a temporary aspect of you, it's not the full you, then you won't get so frustrated by it, and you won't have to have anger for people. Now it's going to drop down to another level, because Pr8 is going to want to know more about this concept that the body is not the entire self. So Pr8 is going to ask now, if the body is not exactly the self, then what is it? And that's very interesting, because a lot of people who hear about the idea that the body is not the self, they then jump to the conclusion that there's no relation between the self and the body, which is also completely fallacious. There's an absolute relationship between there's an absolute relationship between the self and the body. Otherwise, you wouldn't have a particular body. There'd be just some universal body that everybody inhabits. There's a specific body to each individual, because each individual is responsible. The body is the product of each individual. There is an inherent connection between the self and its body. But it's not the full, perfect expression of the self. So let's see exactly what he says. And then I think we'll stop here and then maybe retrack. If the body is not exactly the self, what is it? Pr8 asks. And Vishnu answers, the wise know that the body is a tangible result of our self-ignorant desires. This is why the wise are not terribly attached to the pleasures that might be acquired by their body. So what did he say? The wise know that the body is, first of all, a tangible thing. Second of all, it's a resultant thing. It's a resulting thing. Something is causing it to manifest. The wise know that the body is a tangible result of what? What's causing the body to make its tangible manifestation? Desires. Our own desires. So the body is the tool that we develop. We build this body. The Atma builds the body out of nothing. This material gets put together and grows out of invisible atoms and things. It's incredible. We build the body as a tool. I mean, with the help, of course, of all the gods and Paramatma. You build the body as a tool for fulfilling your desires. That's what a body is. It's a tool for the mind to take actions, the actions that it wants to take. The wise know that the body is a tangible result of our desires, but he's got a little adjective on the desires. It's called self-ignorant. So because the mind has self-ignorant desires, it produces a body which is also a tool for fulfilling self-ignorant desires. So whether or not it fulfills its desires or not is not terribly important to a person that's not interested in that self-ignorance, that's interested in self-awareness. So the next sentence he says is, this is why the wise are not terribly attached to the pleasures that might be acquired by their body. Tool in Sanskrit is Indra. Indra is the guy who can use a thunderbolt, and the guy who can use weapons, and the guy who uses tools. And the guy who holds a tool is called the Indra, and the king holds the scepter. Indra means the one who has the power to use things. And Indriya, it means the thing which is being used. The body is the Indriya as a whole. It's a collection of Indriyas. Indriyas are like your hands, your feet, your eyes, your mouth. The senses are called Indriyas. So the body is actually a meta tool. Each individual sense and each individual limb is an actual tool for doing something. All right. So hard to stop. Let me just give you a preview of the questions that Pr8 is going to ask. How does this lack of attachment make them less malicious? Because the basic theme of the whole conversation is don't be malicious. Don't hold on to your hatred. Here's Indra. He wants you to forgive him. Forgive him. Don't hold on to your anger. How can I not hold on to my anger? Realize the stuff that you're getting angry about is stuff that pertains to your body and how it's trying to fulfill its self-ignorant desires. So what's the big deal? So his next question is, how does detachment from self-ignorant desires make you less malicious? And then another question is, if the body is not the actual identity, it's not the source of identity, it's the manifestation or tangible result of desires that are based on some identity. So what is the actual identity? Or what is the entity that is the actual identity? That's one of the interesting questions that are coming up. Then he's also going to ask, what's the relationship between the actual identity and the false identity? And what's the practical difference between a person who's got a false identity and a person who's got their actual identity? Then, yeah, I can't wait for Monday and Tuesday. That answer to the question of what's the difference between the false person with the false identity and a person with a true identity is pretty long and detailed. And then Pr8 is actually going to wind up expressing how he wants to be Lakshmi. That's going to blow your mind. So yeah, that'll be all for today. Those are the coming attractions for this conversation that Vishnu has with Pr8. He is going to wind up forgiving Indra, of course. Let me see if there's any interesting stuff in this chat. Any questions? I think Anil's question will get answered. All right, great. So yeah, stay tuned. Coming attractions. And I'm working on the Dhruva book. So hopefully you guys have all gotten these other two books, Shiva, Sati, and Life Lessons. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.